Hello, everyone. I can see a few people start to trickle in, so I'm going to give a couple of more minutes for more people to join before we proceed. Hi, Udo. I can see you. Hello, Christina. Thanks for joining. Feel free to drop a message in the chat. It is going to be quite an informative session. Feel free to drop a message in the chat. We'll just give another minute for more people to join. Thanks for joining, guys. Okay, let's start. As other people trickle in, I'm sure they'll catch up to where we are. I'll start with an intro of myself and what I do, and we can go right into the session today, which is a mastermind on the top skills required for a project manager to be successful. That's a mouthful, but you get the gist. Okay, who is Anna? Anna is a seasoned IT professional that Anna, I've worked as a program manager and project manager for well over a decade. I've worked on large, complex projects within primarily the financial services. In the last almost a decade or so, I've been working in the insurance space and on large, complex projects. And I've worked across multiple geographies, different continents, Asia, North America, Europe, and my experience keeps growing as I consult with different companies. So I work primarily as an independent consultant. So I tend to move around quite a bit, which has really helped me in a short time frame to amass a lot of experience because I've worked with many different companies. I have an MBA in terms of my professional qualifications. I have an MBA from Queen's University. I am project management certified, so a project management professional, PMP. I'm also a certified Scrum Master. And I have a fellowship in life insurance, what we call the FLMI, which is the highest honor academically for life insurance. It's a life insurance exam that qualifies you to be a fellow once you kind of go through the process of passing all the required steps to get there. So that's from qualifications. That's my qualification, and it's still growing. I'm currently working as a part-time lecturer, professor, instructor with Conestoga College. So I also have the experience of working with higher institutions. I'm a wife, a mother, an entrepreneur. I do dabble in other things aside from academia and working as an independent consultant. And finally, I'm an avid supporter of women empowerment. Now, I do consult individually with people, offering coaching and mentoring to people who are looking to take their skills to the next level, looking to fulfill purpose and be that project manager that's in demand, highly skilled. And I'll give an example. My last few contracts, I've not had to apply. I'm reached out to come and consult with companies. So I'm hoping from these sessions, and if you decide to work with me one-on-one, that's where I want to get you. So a few things I'll share with you regarding my experience and what I, really have to offer if we do work one-on-one. One is I've collectively managed portfolios of projects of over $5 million, and that continues to grow. And I've done that successfully. I've worked with multiple geographies, as I mentioned earlier. And I understand geographical sensitivities, cultures, and how to build strategy, which is very key, especially if you're working as an independent consultant or even a full-time resource as a project or program manager. You need to bring some level of diversity to your role. And finally, why Anna? I got my first six-figure job at 29. Yeah, I was 28 going on 29 when I got my first gig that was six figures. So who else to guide you to that path, if not someone who's walked it? And ever since I walked that path, walked into that level at 29, it's remained consistent. So I'm hoping that within a short time frame, I can bring that added benefit to you. And you probably don't have to go through the lengthy process I did. I think that's the value of having a mentor, is to ensure that you avoid some of those pitfalls or roadblocks and you get to your goal quicker. So if you are interested in having a chat, having a complimentary half-an-hour consultation with me free of charge, there is the link to my calendar website. You can feel free to go in there. It's up to date, and book some time with me. Okay, let's get into things. Top skills of a successful project manager. I am going to go right into those skills and enumerate, start by giving you a definition of these skills and how you can sharpen them. First, I'll start with the first skill I have here, which is communication. And we all communicate every day, from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, verbally or non-verbally. So what is communication? Communication is simply the act of transferring information from one place, person, or group to another. Every communication involves at least one sender, a message, and a recipient. And that's the core of what we do as project managers, is we communicate. We communicate with senior management, we communicate with our teams, we communicate on statuses, we communicate at steering committee meetings, we communicate at status meetings with our teams. We are the core communicators within our organizations. It's the core of what we do. I can't stress that enough. So as a project manager, you should be able to effectively communicate. Okay, now how do you develop those communication skills? I'll give a few. One is listen and ask questions. Oftentimes, we get into the situation where we're listening to respond, as opposed to listening actively to understand before we respond. So it's all well and good to want to listen to respond, but you need to listen to understand before you respond. And, whether your communication is with a client or employee, you have to make sure that you're actively listening. And when this is followed by asking relevant questions, it leads to better decision-making. So listening actively would actually facilitate that process to ask the right questions. And in our role as project managers, we're constantly communicating. We're in meetings, we're writing emails, we're keeping the right people abreast of what the situation is, how the project is progressing. So this is a core skill too, is knowing to listen actively because it helps you ask the right questions. How again do you develop that skill of communication, giving authentic feedback? Feedback is very critical for personal and professional development. Don't hesitate to give authentic feedback to whom you are communicating with. And when I say authentic feedback, you're in a meeting and you're not clear on what is going on. You don't feel that there's enough context in, I'll just give an example. Your developer is providing an update and you're not clear. I mean, do you sit there and pretend like you know what's going on? Or do you give feedback, and feedback being you're not trying to belittle your team members or who you're discussing with. It's authentic feedback in you want to facilitate that process to ensure that there's trust between you and your team members or whomever you're working with. So it's fair to tell your developer that just, a little feedback is when you're providing updates, I would appreciate if, to a certain extent, you try not to dilute it with too much technical jargons because things are lost in translation. That's giving authentic feedback, and it's going to help you as a project manager when you're in the situation where you need to relay messages back to your business stakeholders, that you're relaying that message in a way that they can understand. So giving authentic feedback to your developer to help you understand things a little more in layman's terms would help you in your position when you're conveying these messages to your stakeholders, who essentially are your clients. They're the ones paying the dollars for the project. So you've given authentic feedback, and in turn, it's going to benefit you. So I'll say part of communication too is giving authentic feedback to the resources that you're working with. And I'll give you one more nugget. Consolidate the communication. Don't extend your discussion in different directions. You have to stay focused on a key message to avoid confusion. So stay focused, try to understand the lane you're in, the conversation you're having, the project you're working on, the task you're working on. As much as possible, do not go in different directions. Be clear, be concise, and stay focused on one key message before you move to the other. Okay. We'll move on to the next skill, which is organization. What is organization and how do I get organized? One of the definitions of organizations is having one's affairs in order so as to deal with them efficiently. And I'm reading from my little notes to make sure that I'm giving you the right definition. And I'll say that again, organization and how do I get organized? So organization, one of the definitions of organizations is having one's affairs in order so as to deal with them efficiently. Organization is a tangible project management skill that includes some sub-skills, and I'll enumerate some of those sub-skills for you. One, being able to build a structure that will make your execution seamless. Think of the process of building a house. The most important part is always your foundation. If your foundation is not done properly, it could lead to a disastrous outcome. And that is very similar to what happens in a project. You want to ensure that you have a very solid structure before you start to execute or do other things. And when I say solid structure, it could be very well taking a step back to look at the type of project that you're working on and deciding what are the tools I need to run this project effectively. It could be building a structured folders in your SharePoint or your shared drive, anywhere you're storing your documents, to ensure that it is organized properly to make it easier for you to access information. So for example, you're in the planning phase, you have a folder for planning. Your initiation phase, you have a folder for initiation, and that would contain things like your intake form, different information that would help you initiate the project, your scope, and a couple of other items that would be beneficial for the initiation phase of your project. Your planning folder could have your project plan, could have your resource plan, and those plans that, again, as you go through the project, you've already built that foundation. So it's just really continuous improvement, and things are easily accessible as you move on. That's the benefit of organization, just taking a step back before things get too busy, because anyone who's managed projects, you know that it gets to a stage where everything might be crazy. Things are, coming at you from every angle. Being organized from the onset would significantly minimize any type of confusion, lethargy from all the things coming from different angles. So ensure you're organized, and you need to build a structure from the onset to ensure that you have a process that's repeatable. You've built your folder so you know where to go into, where to access information. And that's as simple as it is. Build a structure. The next one is being able to manage time. I'm not going to go too much into that. It helps you being able to manage time. It could be your calendar, just blocking off your calendar. If you need to get if you need some focused time to get things done, block of time on your calendar. Make sure your calendar is up to date so that people can reach out to you and set up time if they need to access you. That's all part of organization, ensuring your calendar is up to date. Another way to stay organized is following a planned schedule regularly. So it could be your MS project that you've captured all the tasks that need to be executed, and ensuring that each and every day, and even more than once, a couple of times a day, you're checking to ensure that tasks are being executed and they're on target. It could also mean your meetings that you have with your team, depending on the size and complexity of the projects you're working on. If it's less complex, you could get away with weekly status meetings with your team. If it's more complex, then that means you might have to have daily stand-up with your team, because maybe time is of the essence. There is more complexity. It's time bound. The timing is inflexible. Your scope is inflexible, and you want to make sure that you're staying on top of things. Okay. So those are a few nuggets for you to get organized. So just to reiterate, organization is very, very important in being a successful project manager. I think I talked about blocking off your calendars, and that's very important. At times we get sucked into the busyness of working on the project, and we want to talk to everybody. We We want to be accessible at all times, but at times that might not be beneficial. You probably would need time to digest all the information and have that time to think strategically. So there's absolutely nothing wrong in blocking off like half an hour, blocking off an hour, blocking off your afternoon to kind of, look at things holistically and see how, you can be more efficient with your project, look from another lens if there's a solution you can bring about to an issue, even at times going back to why are we doing this project? Because I'll tell you, with years of managing projects, I do get into those situations that once you get into execution stage, it's just like go, 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 go. And at times you lose the initial reason why you started the project. The essence of it is lost because you're just in like execution mode, and you've forgotten that the reason why you're embarking on this project is there's some profitability attached to the project, or there's efficiencies that might be gained from operations. There's always a reason. Projects are not just launched because people want to launch projects. There's always a financial reason, some regulatory reason. It might be government mandated projects that we have to do for compliance, or just the company has decided that by the end of Q2, and this is hypothetical, we want to have like 10 million in revenue by Q3 from this line of business. And this project has been initiated to ensure that the efficiencies and the operations are built to hit those, sales targets. And at times, again, we lose the essence of why we're in the phase where we just go into execution mode, and it's you start to lose why you're doing it. So at times it's important to take a step back and look at things holistically and remind yourself why you're going through the project. Okay. The third skill I would mention is adaptability. And, it is the ability. What is adaptability? It is the ability to adjust yourself to changing situations and conditions. Very important. Project managers should not be afraid of change. I would further go ahead and say you don't even expect change, you anticipate change and you welcome change. Because if you've worked as a project manager, that change is something that most of the time it's almost constant, that there will be changes within your project. And coming in with the mindset of embracing change makes a successful project manager, makes it easier on the project manager, because they've come in with the mindset that change will happen. I have to be adaptable. I have to be open to change, and I have to facilitate a process to ensure that whatever is coming at me from every angle, I'm thinking strategically and I'm employing the resources around me to bring about a solution. That's part of adaptability. And I'll give a few, a bit of some points on what being adaptable means. One, like I mentioned, you are able to handle changes. Another is you're equipped for the outcomes of change. And I'd mentioned that you don't just expect change, you anticipate change, and it's a different ballgame when you have that mindset. With being adaptable, you can mold the situation and not let the situation mold you negatively. I'll use the word negatively. If it molds positively, I think that's a good thing. But molding, you can mold the situation and take a step back, as opposed to let the situation throw you around. You can take a step back and think, how do I resolve this situation? What resources do I need to leverage? Who do I need to keep informed? and who's being impacted, by this whole situation. Being adaptable helps you mold the situation because you're not frozen where you are. You're quick to change with the times and think differently to ensure that you're adapting to the situation and you're bringing about the required change. Okay. Another benefit is you'll become valuable to your organization. I can tell you that personally. I've even currently have a situation where the release process, and when I say release process, that's the process where once you've done all your changes within the project, it has to go live. That's that release process. There were, from my experience or what I'm experiencing right now with the organization I'm consulting with, there were issues with the release management process. And I was approached, saying, can you help us with this process? Because we find that, there's a lot of issues happening, from resourcing to versioning and everything that could possibly go wrong. And I was able to quickly adapt and propose a new process for them than what they were, different from what was currently happening. I proposed a gate review process where, at each step of the release, there has to be a gate that has to be vetted. All the tasks has to be completed and the people need to be accountable. And I can go on and on. The resources have to be aligned. That is adaptability. I was able to adapt quickly to propose a new process to my organization, which they thankfully accepted. If I was stuck with the current process and not thinking outside the box or being rigid, then, there won't be the opportunity for, this organization to approach me saying, can you help us? And that's one of the benefits of adaptability is you become valuable to your organization. And of course, lastly, you can drive your project back on track when you're adaptable. Now, how do you develop adaptability? There's one recommendation, and there'll probably be some sub steps under. It's practice agility training exercises. Now, how do you do this? Try new ideas, like what I just mentioned right now. Don't get stuck with the current process. Try out new things. Don't be scared to approach your boss, your peers, to propose a new approach. Don't be scared to get the support of your team members. Like, go around and propose new ideas. And it's almost like in politics when you lobby and get people to see your vision and support it. Try out new ideas. Another point of another agility training exercise would be look to simplify the processes. How many times do we get into a company and they already have their predefined process and it's like, you have to follow this process, and we just keep following it mindlessly and not even thinking, can it be more efficient? And we just get blind to the inefficiencies of working in a certain way. Don't be scared to find ways to simplify the process. It should always be at the back of your mind. That's another way you can practice agility. Lastly, increase capacity through cross-team coordination. And that means it's just, don't be stuck with only your PM team. Try to collaborate with other teams like your QA team, try to understand what their defect management process is, even volunteer, through the defect meetings. Can I run one of your defect calls? Be agile and try, it's important as a project manager to try other functional teams and have collaborations across different teams. Okay, so that is it for adaptability and how also to practice being adaptable and agile. And feel free, if you need, just drop me a line, drop a question. I have my email in there. And also I'd mentioned that I do have my calendar link in the message below in the description. So feel free to book a complimentary 30-minute call. Let's just talk about where you are and where you're looking to go and how we can work together. I'll give you one more point before I wrap it up. Another skill successful project managers have is empathy and emotional intelligence. Now, what is empathy? Empathy is the ability to understand and feel the emotions of other people. And it empowers you as a project manager to build strong relationships. It leads to a motivational and rewarding business atmosphere. And I'm just reading this from the notes I've written. It also proves to be vital for resolving conflicts. Empathy, like I said, is just, it's to understand and feel the emotions of other people. You're able to put yourself in other people's shoes. And in our role, we tend to work with different cross-functional teams, who have varying degrees of complexities in their roles. And at times you're going to work with people who, do not necessarily agree with you, which is, I guess it's the norm. At times working in organizations and being in our role, we deal and work with a lot of complexities. They might not agree with you, or you have team members that don't agree with each other. In those situations, your ability to be empathetic and see yourself in their shoes would go a long way, and we talked about adaptability as one of the skills. It also plays into empathy, being adaptable enough to see yourself in the other person's shoes as opposed to being rigid. I'll give a few points on how to develop it. And empathy also ties into emotional intelligence, and that's a whole other module that we can talk about at some other time. So how do you develop it? Connect with your team members, develop a sense of connection with your team. It could be as simple as going for coffee, trying to understand or get to know them outside of your working, your project, the organization. Build a relationship with your team members. You don't have to force it, because that could come across as being disingenuous, but just let things happen naturally. Show interest, listen to their concerns and understand the problems they're facing. If you find that you have a team member who's struggling, take the time to get to know them, pull them aside, have a one-on-one. I know now we're primarily virtual, so it might be hard to go for coffee. If you're in person, go for coffee, try to understand them. That's one of the ways to develop empathy. Another way is, this might seem a little odd, but by reading fiction. Read. That's, fiction, nonfiction, but in this case, reading fiction would improve your ability to understand complicated personalities and scenarios. And I'll give you something I wrote down here. It says fiction has the capacity to transport you into another's character's mind, allowing you to see and feel what they do, this can expose us to life circumstances that are very different from our own. So fiction really serves as a playground for exercising empathetic skills, because you read, you're trying to understand different complex characters, you're trying to put yourself in their shoes. It just opens up your mind in a way that you can apply that when you're dealing with people within your organizations. Lastly, on empathy is understand others' emotions. So practice feeling what others are feeling. It enables you to understand their viewpoints, purpose, and intentions. One more nugget before we adjourn for today is on flappability. Successful project managers are unflappable. I know that sounds like a bird flying. Every time I hear that word, I think of a bird, but it is unflappability. It is the ability to stay calm under stress. High stress situations are common in our role. Yeah, very, where at times some people say we're the jack of all trades, master of none. I hate to say that, but I think all to say we're dealing with different cross-functional teams. We're under pressure from, senior leadership. We're under pressure to deliver. We're under pressure to motivate a team to deliver. So it could be stressful. Now, being unflappable is your ability to remain calm under pressure. And that is another skill that successful project managers do have. Great project managers always thrive through turmoil. How do you develop being unflappable? And I'll give you a few tips before we wrap up. One is recognizing your stress triggers. When you recognize your stress triggers, you're able to handle it. So ensure that you're understanding those things that are triggers and would potentially cause you stress, because if you know them, then you can react positively. Okay? In order to handle stress, you need to know your stressors. Evaluate the situations or conditions that make you stress and ensure that you're building an action plan so that it does not derail you or your project. Another point is learn from your experiences. Use your experiences as a guide. Specify answers to, and I'll specify answers to these questions. Let me rephrase that. So there are some specific questions you can ask to ensure that you're thinking you're not thinking in a negative way, but you're thinking in a way to bring about resolution. One being, think, what was the scenario that caused the stress, or what's the stressor? How did it come about? What was your response and why? And finally, what could you have done differently? So it's really sitting down and taking yourself outside of the situation and looking at it objectively and building an action plan on how you would respond another time. The more you take yourself outside of the situation and look at it objectively and build your action plan, it becomes easier and easier once these stressors or, situations arise that could potentially derail your project, derail your emotions. As you practice taking yourself outside of the situation and looking at it holistically and objectively, you get better with time. And that's how you build the skill of being unflappable. With that being said, I will call it a session for today. I do have other skills that I would be talking about, and I'll be sharing more nuggets with you in the next masterclass. But for now, thank you for joining. And I'll reiterate again, if you want to work one-on-one, and you're interested in having a complimentary call with me, the link, my calendar, is in the description box. Hit the link, set up some time, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope this has been an informative session, and I'm looking forward to more free mastermind classes, and also, getting questions. My email is also in the description below. Feel free to drop me a message. I'm always excited to answer questions and provide direction. Until next time, stay safe and we will connect again. Thank you for joining.